All right, welcome everyone. Chris Petri here. I'm really glad you're here. We're going to have an exciting time painting this beautiful ocean scene with fishing shacks and docks. Tons of beautiful, interesting information on this painting. We're going to have a fun time drawing it first and then painting it. You're going to see the whole process broken down simply and effectively as we go. And we're going to show you everything on camera. So you're going to have our photograph of our scene right here on our phone set up in the upper left hand corner so you can watch the photograph as you're working. We're going to have the palette in view, so you'll see the palette and all the colors I use. I show you all the color mixes as we go along here so you can get all these beautiful colors mixed up. This is not an extremely difficult color mixtures in this painting. It's basically some beautiful blues, red and gold, some yellows with some really beautiful viridian green, and we just have a fun time. We're doing the glazing technique, which you're really going to have a fun time with. We're going to wet the whole paper first once we're done with our sketch and get some tons of water on top of the paper, let that dry, and then we go over the top and get our beautiful washes of color in here, the more darker tonal values of the painting, some shadowing and reflections underneath the docks here along these fishing shacks along the ocean. We'll do those shadowing colors last. You'll see the final details of maybe getting in some of the wires for the telephones and power for these fishing shacks here along the ocean. And so let's jump right in and start working right away. And I'm hoping you're enjoying the watercolor journey. It's a fun one. Keep sticking with me here week after week, month after month, and year after year. We're having a great time here doing these type of paintings where we learn all the really fundamental, again, techniques and methods of watercolor. This one, again, is the glazing technique, which is really fantastic. It's a lot of fun. You use tons of water, and then we get into some really beautiful colors as well. Okay, so we'll get started in just a second. All right, we just saw the finished painting. We're getting started with the pencil drawing first, and I guess the main thing I wanted to cover here when we first start out is, you can do your drawings as carefully as you would like or as free as you would like. So sometimes I know some of you might like to draw more freer sketches, and you might not want to get really involved too much in like perfection as far as your drawings go, but again, you can use rulers. I sometimes will use a small ruler, a half-size ruler, to sometimes get some structural type things, like maybe a house. We're going to do some sea shacks here, as you know, along the water. And but again, you feel free to sketch it in the way you want to, or to draw it in more, perfectly if you want. Like maybe you're going to get all really nice vertical lines like this. Some of you might like to draw your shacks in more of a sketch format, so you might have like everything is not perfectly vertical. Most buildings are always built vertically, perfectly vertically plumb when things are framed and so forth, houses and buildings, and then over time they do sometimes shift a little bit, and you'll get a little bit of variation from exactly being straight. But a building over time might have a little bit of irregularities to it, but for the most part, it's up to you. I'm going to use a ruler on this. I'm hoping you can see the picture pretty good here. This is a photograph of a fishing village along the ocean. So we're going to kind of get the basic idea of this here. What I'll do is I'll first start drawing in the buildings here, the fishing shacks here, and then we'll do the pilings and like walkways and sort of like it's like a boardwalk almost, but like, pilings and planks for the walkways along the sea shacks. And then over here, there's a little more pilings and some areas where they pull up the boats, some dock areas and things. So, and we'll do some vertical, I guess these look like power poles. So for the shacks, they need heat and telephone and things like that, electricity. So there's a couple verticals for those too. So we're going to kind of have some really nice verticals in this painting already. I can kind of see it. We're going to probably consider the vertical lines in this picture as being like the dominant theme of the painting, like all the pilings and the there's some poles here with communications and electric on them, and So we're going to kind of use all those things to make an interesting looking painting. And so let's start out here. I kind of see that the this side of the, so sort of the right-hand lower corner is like the major area where we have our structures, our fishing shacks with the boardwalk there, the planking and the pilings. So let's do that. Let's say about a little bit above halfway is sort of where that happens. The sea shacks are mostly there. So I'm going to just start in one section and work my way over. I think I'll start on the right. And if I look at this picture overall, this photograph, and I'm going to now transpose this onto here, I notice that this first shack here is definitely a little bit over left of center. So if we were to look at this and say, okay, that's the center of the photograph, this first shack here starts a little bit left of center. So if I just, maybe I'll do a quick outline of my rectangle here, just so we have an idea of our rectangle that we're working with. So this is the rectangle here. And I'll just do this so we can see this on camera. Like that. So that's our rectangle. And it looks like our light is pretty much, I would say pretty much overhead. So our lighting, and we like to have our sunlight in our, we like to have our sunlight or our lighting just captured in maybe a little insignia on the top of our painting and drawing, so that we kind of know where we're going to put our light and shadows. So our light is pretty much overhead, straight down this way, and a little bit behind the subject matter. So you can kind of see the light is hitting the tops of the roofs of the shacks, and then the boardwalk area. So it is a little bit backlit. So if you can imagine, the light is coming from the front of our view. So if we were sitting in a chair and drawing and painting this live and on location, the sunlight would be a little bit in front of us, shining towards us. And that's kind of the way we're going to see the shadow patterns and things like that, and the light patterns on these buildings, these fishing shacks along the ocean. So we'll continue on here. I just wanted to get that light insignia. So we have that. And then again, we're going to have this, we're going to make this fun and enjoyable. So again, we said the halfway point on our paper is about here. And then we said that the first shack is a little bit over to the left of that. So we'll put our first shack about here. And then I'm just going to sort of get a straight line here for this side of the shack. And there's a lot of interesting verticals and lines and things. But this looks about kind of where things are, the first shack here. And then that's the first roof line there. So that goes back like this. This comes down like so. And you never worry if you draw some lines over things. You can just lift them up a little bit with a kneaded eraser like this. And this might not be that angle was a little bit too much there, so I'm just going to make sure I get a little bit less than that there. And then this angle goes here. And then the other shack is here. And its roof starts there, and it goes up like so, like this. And then that roof pitch goes this way. And then I'll do another vertical line here, straight down, like that. And then there's another vertical line here. So I'm going to try to keep these pretty straight. You can see pretty straight there on the lines there. And then I notice this one here, of course, will keep that one coming down this way. And we're going to have a lot of information in front of these shacks. Like I could see there's a little bit of some staircases in front of these fishing shacks and doors and windows and things. So you're not going to have to really worry about it too much as far as the details on the fronts of these here, because it's in shadow too. It's a little bit darker. So we're going to paint over this mostly, so you won't have too much detail in the front part of these shacks really, because it's all in shadow basically. The roofs are going to be light though. The roofs are going to have some sunlight on them, so you will see those pretty, pretty bright and filled with sunlight on the tops of the roofs. And then again, this is all going to be in shadow here, most of this, the fronts of these shacks here, or the walls, I should say. All right, so now we have over here there's another wall that comes down here, and there's another roof that comes here like so. Like that. And then this one comes down like that. And then I'll use the ruler again and just come down straight like that. So again, we're doing some really basic lines here, vertical lines, straight. We're keeping them very straight and vertical, plumb, with the ruler. That's going to look really good. People generally like to see straight lines in their paintings and in artwork. And then there's another bit of a canopy over here, like so, in front of this, like a little bit of a shed roof here, like that in front. And then there's some posts that come down like that. And then maybe like here, like so. And again, you don't have to worry too much. We're going to have lots of lines in this. And we're going to do a lot of painting with tons of water. We're going to use the glazing method on this video, on this tutorial. We're going to use the glazing technique. So we're going to do just a ton of water on the painting first. And then we'll go in and add some more interesting darker darks after we get the really light washes on this paper first. So we're going to kind of having fun doing that. All right, so we have the buildings so far, the sea shacks here, the fishing shacks. And then over here it looks like there's like a dock of some sort that has pilings. And we're not going to get, over here we're not going to get too, let's say when you're painting, and you hear me say this a lot, you're the artist, you have to try to make things easy for yourself when you're drawing and painting, and always try to think to yourself, can I like take my artist liberty and make things easier for myself when I'm doing a drawing and a painting, a watercolor painting, of course. Can I do things that will sort of, help me to get a painting done without getting into too much detail where I wind up just working for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours and trying to do all fine details in a picture you might see, a photograph, or even if you're out on location. So that's what we're going to do here. You can see from the photograph here, and I'm hoping, I always try to get the photograph on whenever I can of our tutorials here. So you can see there is a lot of details in this, and we're going to try to minimize the details. So over here on the left-hand side, to the left of this side of the shack, I'm going to minimize and simplify this by just blocking it out and putting vertical lines and making it look interesting, like so. But I'm not going to get too much involved with a lot of details. We can just paint in some really interesting looking lines and things, and it'll kind of be to our benefit that we don't have to do too much detail. And so we'll do one of our poles here with our electric and telephone lines and things like that. And that's about up here, which is quite a bit up higher than the tops of the roofs. And that's the same there in the photographs. And then over here we have the same thing. The only this pole here with the telephone and power lines is a little bit lower because it's going in the into the distance here. So that's going to go like that. And then there's another one too we can see far off in the distance. And that's over about here on the picture. We can make it a little bit over here like so. Like that. And we can even make that one smaller. Let's just make that one line like that. We'll make that one very, very thin like that. And that'll just be and that over there like so. And then we're just gonna remember to put a couple lines here like so. Like this. And that I think is pretty good. We have another, what I'll do is I'll leave this over here. There tends to be another roof over here, but I'll leave that roof out. And this way maybe we can get some of the ocean on both sides of the shack so that we can kind of see through the picture really nicely on both sides of the fishing shacks. So if I take a larger ruler, I'll try to find my larger ruler now, and I have that. So here in this photograph, I'm going to see that the ocean is about the top of, or actually right at the, I'm going to go just a touch lower than the roof, where the roof meets the walls of the fishing shacks, like that, the fascia of the, and I'll do that, and I'll make my line, and that's going to be my ocean, distant ocean, like that. And then over here, there's a large, looks like a large maybe storage box or something, like that. Okay, we've done quite a bit of drawing so far, and that's when I always say, if you've been doing a lot of planning and sketching and drawing, no sense in going too much and kind of like biting off more than we can chew. Let's just kind of take a little bit of a break here right now, and then we'll finish the drawing. So usually we can get a drawing done in 2 passages, let's say. So we do the first part of the drawing, get things situated really nicely like we have here, and then let's take a break, and then we'll get in the pilings and the planking for the docks over here in the front of the shacks. So you can see that here. There's plenty of planking and pilings. So let's do that, and water. And we're going to get that into our drawing next. So let's take a break. No worries. And be back in about 2 seconds. All right, we're picking back up again, and I think we are really in good shape with our drawing so far. I think the only thing we'll do now is just try to get in these plankings, and that should be good. So I noticed right away that there is, if I pick a spot that I kind of know, this is here like that, so I'm going to make, and I'm going to go over this in a darker pencil line. I'm going to go over the top of this pencil drawing again in a darker drawing quickly in about 5 or 10 minutes. I just want to get the boards and the planking and the pilings here for the this foreground area. So I noticed right away. I'm going to use a longer ruler here, just because the line going from the boardwalk here. So I'll make this a little darker. So these are the fronts of the fishing shacks like this. I'm noticing that the kind of the docks that go across here are so like that. So we're seeing some water underneath of this shack here. And then this trails out sort of toward the bottom. So this is a somewhat, not a tremendously angled line, but it is like that. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the artist liberty, and sort of just say, all right, that's about where that is there. And it's a little bit wider so it's a little bit thinner. Actually, if you can imagine, let's get another line here. So now I'm looking and I'm saying the next line is about here. I'm looking at one of these pilings over here next to this shack here. There's a piling here, and that seems to be about where that thinner planking over here ends, and then it gets into a wider section of planking, like a dock area. So let's do that. Let's take this line, bring it down this way, and then we have the, like that. So then we can take this line and go from here to here. Not drastic, but it is a little wider over here. You can kind of see it's wider and it's getting a little thinner there, like that. And then this line goes this way. And if I look at it, it is somewhat like a pyramid. So it's almost like a triangle. It's almost like a triangle like this. So that's fine. So then we just take another line and go like this and say, all right, that's going to be this line here. Now, all I have to do is figure out where does this line from this point out to here, where does this line end on the front of this dock area here? And then I look over to my photograph and I say it's a little bit left of the top of the ridge of this roof here. So this is the ridge here, the ridge of the roof. So when we're talking about structures and these fishing shacks, you have the ridge of the roof here, which is the very, very top point of the roof, the ridge. And then you have the rake edges, which are the angled lines that come down from the ridge of the roof, which is the very, very top point, the ridge up here. So this ridge here in this photograph, these docks here are just a little bit to the left of that ridge. So if I take that ridge point there and I drop it straight down, then I notice I should be a little bit to the left of that. So I have to maybe just lift up a little bit of a pencil line there and say it's about here where that dock is here, the edge of that dock there. And then it's going to go across this way, and I notice, let me figure out next, where's the next longest line at the furthest point I can see. Where is that in relation to these shacks over here on the right side? So then I look over here and I say, okay, well, this here is like so, and then this goes across there. So there is a line here like so in the photograph. And that's about where this line is across this way. So let's do that. Let's get these lines all the way across. And again, I'm using a ruler because it really does help a lot. If you're doing not that you have to be that straight with your lines when you're painting, but it is good to get these good lines with your ruler and your pencil so that it's, kind of, it makes it easier to plan these lines out to get these docks in the front. And then I noticed there's another vertical power and telephone line, a pole here with telephone line. It's a piling that comes up, and it's, I'm not going to actually, let me put that in. That actually looks good. Let's put that in. So that will be up here, like this. And let's go up higher. Let's change things around. Remember, if you're the artist, you can change things in your painting to make them look more interesting. So I'm going to make this power and telephone piling here taller than the other ones over here, just because I think it's going to look better. So you can change around your drawings. Remember that. Always remember that. You can change things around to make it look better, to enhance it for your own creativity as an artist. All right, so now we've got all these really good lines here, and we're going to say that this is the other dock back here, and we'll put some pilings over here. So we'll make some small vertical pilings over here, like so in the distance. We have our line across here, and then there's one more. Looks like a walkway of planking that comes across this way. And then if I go over here to the picture, to the photograph, I notice that walkway is pretty much following almost the same angle as this wall here on this fishing shack here. It's just this way closer, so we'll put that this a little bit closer this way, like that. It follows pretty much the same angle, like that, and then we'll make it a little wider here, like so, like that. And then you can kind of see how we already have some really good lines. So now what I'm going to do is go over this with a darker line, just so you can kind of see how everything comes together. I know sometimes it's more difficult if I'm drawing lighter lines to get things into this sketch and rectangle here, and then I think I noticed here's the sea level. I don't know what that was. I have to all right, I will take one more break for just a second, and we'll get started in just 2 minutes. Again, take breaks whenever you need them. You may not need them all the time. You might only need a few breaks throughout your whole painting process, drawing and painting process. It's up to you. You can work as much or as little as you want. I'm going to maybe just come over here more and get some more of these. These are some more pilings and things like that along here. Like that. I think I'll end this dock here. These pilings over here and these dock areas here, I'm going to leave this here. This way we have a little bit of like room. We can feel like we have some space in between the edge of the painting and these pilings in this dock here, where we might be docking some boats. And then over here, this is going to be darker with more information there. And we're going to sort of go over this again with one dark sketch pencil line, which we would consider a contour drawing, basically over the top of this preliminary sketch. So we're calling this a preliminary sketch. We get everything in a preliminary fashion first, take our time, get our angles correct, our lines. As you saw, we just kind of took our time, looked at our photograph, kept going back and forth, looking at the photograph, doing a little bit at a time. One shack there, where is it? It's a little bit past the halfway point this way. Next shack here, it's next to it. We kind of have the feel for that. The other portion of this shack is just another section of it here is lower, and we got that in there. That's no problem. And a little shed roof there with some there's some posts there that are sitting holding up this small shed roof there. So you can kind of see we just went along, and we got the horizon line of the ocean here in the distant ocean. And again, we did some of these areas here where we have the some of these plankings and things like that. And then over here, there is, it might be that there are some I'll tell you what, let's take a break. I see some more things I'm going to try to draw in next. We can paint them in actually, but I will sketch them in a little bit. But let's take a break again, because I'm seeing things. That's why I always like to say take breaks. This way you step back, you take a break for 5-10 minutes, get a drink of water, stretch out a little bit, and then you come back and you look, and then you start to say, all right, what else do I need to do that's absolutely necessary? And then that's when you put in your last bit of information with your sketch and your drawing. And then from that point, it's all fun. You're going in, grabbing all our paints, we're mixing up everything and getting on our beautiful washes next. All right, so I'll be back in a second. All right, let's go over now with our dark contour drawing, dark pencil line, just to get everything situated here. And I'm going to go over the pencil line we created with our ruler. Here, let's just go right in with this strong line there. Over here like this, across like that. Over here, we're going to go across like that. And then we're going to do our pilings and dock over here. And then I'll get some of the dark. The roof. Corner of the building there, fishing shack there. Corner of the building here, the next building over. Like that. And this is fun to do because once you have everything lightly sketched in, then you can just go over with your darker lines, and it makes it a lot easier. And it's great to have darker lines when you're going into paint, because then you can see them as you're painting, and it's not like if you go over it you lose the lines. You can kind of see the lines pretty accurately if you're making them dark when you're painting, so that's important. And we also remember that we're doing the glazing technique on this painting, so this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to use tons of water and paint, and put our posts in here like so. This next post is probably over here like that. And then if you have anything else that you think you might see, there might be a door over here like so. And there might be some doors and windows that we left out, so we want to... I think this is a door here, and then there's a window over here, like that. So we'll try to get in our doors and windows. Like that. And there is a walkway here. So I'll put that walkway here where the door is here. Like that. And it might go in between the two buildings, this walkway. I think it does actually. So we'll have a bit of mystery here. And these are some lines there. So there's some posts too for these walkways here. And I see that this is like this could be some storage boxes or something like that over here. But you can kind of see the lines are pretty much coming together. You can see everything clearly. And then we have there are some other lines over here. These might be some other vertical lines for other posts and pilings and things like that. And then we have, let's do our darker lines here. So we want to get those into these. So I'm just going to go over again, use the same line, just retrace it with a darker line so you can kind of see like that, the darker lines here. There, and then over here, this one's kind of thinner. Like that. And then we have some of these, and we'll just have fun creating some loose lines as we go. These lines here start to like this. These are some lines that go across this way, just loosely suggesting those. This line comes straight through here like so. And I think that looks pretty good. We have some more plankings here, so I'll just try to get those like that. Maybe they don't, let's see, I think these pretty much stay pretty much even like that. And again, we will, as we go, we will definitely improv and get some more pilings and things underneath, but we don't have to draw every single pencil line in. That's the thing I wanted to kind of mention. You don't have to draw in every pencil line that you see, or you don't have to draw everything in 100%. Kind of just get some sketch in some lines that you know later we're going to do. And then there's some angled lines. Every once in a while you'll see a couple angled lines like that over here. And then there's a fishing net up here, it looks like. So that goes over here like so, and then there's like this, and then we're going to do there's a area over here that looks like some ground, some actual ground area. If it's not the ground, I think it is the ground actually. I think it kind of, there's like a mound of rock and ground over here that kind of sticks up out of the water, and then the rest of the water is over here, so we're going to have that. And then there's a pole there, and then there's another pole over here, and then there's a fishing net here. Like that. Like that. So that's a fishing net. Like that there. And then if you need to there we go. Just trying to get that accurate. The net, the fish net over here. They have some netting over here that might be for using on the boats, and they just maybe have it out here right now. Maybe they're making some repairs to the fish nets that they're going to bring out onto their boats. And then we have some more okay. The rest we're going to paint in. I think you can kind of see that it's really coming along nicely. Maybe another window over here. And I think that's it. There are a few more things over here. And again, like we said, we are going to paint in some there's some water under these shacks over here. Plenty of pencil lines. We have tons of pencil lines, so we don't have to worry when we go in to paint this now. Next, you have plenty of information that you're going to use, and you're just going to start filling in everything as you go, or painting in everything as you go. But we always remember now, what kind of technique are we going to use? Yes, you've got it. The glazing technique, tons of water. First wash is going to be completely light and watery and interesting colors, the blues and the greens of the painting. And then when we have that first wash completely on the paper, then we let it dry 100%. I am using block paper. We always remember block paper is really easy to, you can find this online. This happens to be Arches. I'm using Arches rough here. This is Arches satin paper, which is smooth paper. You can do a painting on smooth or rough paper, doesn't matter. But the thing is, the block paper is great. You can see how these are all glued. Each page, there's maybe 20 or maybe 15 or 20 watercolor papers on this block, and they're all glued together. So what happens is when you use tons of water on your first wash, all the paper gets buckled and all the water's in there and it's all bubbly looking and buckled the paper. But when you let that dry for a half an hour to an hour, or if you use a blow dryer in 5 or 10 minutes, it goes back to perfectly smooth flat paper like that, so that you can begin to go back in and get lots of lines and whatever details you're putting on your paper, and it's not going to be like your paper's all buckled. So that's really the advantage of having your block paper, is you can use really wet washes. And then once that dries 100%, after you put a really wet wash on it, the paper flattens out again perfectly so that you can go back in and you're not hampered by buckled paper and problems like that. So that's why I really enjoy the block paper like this. And Arches makes great block paper. I know Fabriano makes block paper. Most of your paper manufacturers do make block paper. So you have to kind of search it out and find it, but it's there, it's out there. And I know many of you already use block paper, so I'm just kind of, maybe some of you that are brand new. And if you're brand new here, welcome. Thanks for coming by. So yeah, if you are brand new here, I'm just mentioning some of these things here in case you're deciding to maybe try some block paper eventually to see how that works for your paintings. Okay? All right, so let's do the painting next. Let's just take another quick break. All right, so before we start, I just wanted to maybe zoom in on the photograph here. So I'm going to lift up my phone here and put this over here, and I'm going to try to zoom in on this if I can, just so you can kind of see a real close view of the photograph here. So I apologize. I'm still trying to improve my skills here with my video making here on YouTube. But this should be good. Now you can always, if you have to, you could do a screen capture, a screenshot of this as I zoom in for you. And then you'd have it. You'd kind of see, there it is. I can also edit this to see if I can make it look a little more brighter. I'm looking at it and kind of seeing that it doesn't look all that tremendously bright. Let me see, can I do this? There we go. That's a little brighter. That looks better. Okay, so I'm overdoing it just so you can kind of see. We might actually use this. We're going to save this. See how I did that? I brightened everything up. That looks really good. So for a watercolor painting, and you know probably if you've been following me for a while, if you're brand new, again, welcome, and you might not kind of be used to my style of painting, but I like to use a lot of lights in my paintings and not as much darks. Some watercolor artists on YouTube, some artists like to use lots of dark paint and use tons of darks and middle tones. I'd rather have a lot of lights in my paintings, so maybe more of a higher key. We call this in watercolor high key, low key, middle key. You've probably heard this in watercolors, especially if you've been around a while in watercolors. You kind of hear that term, high key, low key, middle key. I tend to paint high key a lot of times, not always, but I tend to favor that. I really do enjoy that the most, which is a lot of lights, a lot of bright looking light in my painting, and white paper as much as possible. A lot of times I just really am attracted to a lot of bright light in my painting like that. So this here is kind of what we're after. This is what we want our painting to look like when we're finished. So let me save that. So you can do these kind of adjustments when you save your own photographs to work from. So when you're online and you're searching for your subject matter to paint, and you go and you look up different scenes you want, a landscape, a seascape, fishing shacks, ocean scenes, whatever it is, flowers, whatever you like to paint. When you look up that information online, you can save those pictures that you have online, and then you can adjust them. And that's exactly what we did here. We just took our phone and clicked on our photograph and clicked on adjusting our photograph. You just have the adjustments on here. You can make things brighter and darker if you want, lighter if you want. You can adjust the colors if you want, make the colors less bright and intense, or you can make the colors more intense and more interesting. So it's up to you, but we're so lucky today. We have so many great things like phones and iPads and home computers. We can become almost like a photographer. You can almost be like a photographer as well as a watercolor artist. So you take your photographs and you enhance them and you adjust them. You maybe shrink them down. Maybe you can zoom in one section of a photograph that you like. Instead of maybe using the whole photograph, you can kind of crop it down and make it smaller and trim out the outer edges of things, and then you zoom into more of what you want to see. So that's a really big help if you're a watercolor artist. You can adjust your photographs that you find online if you like to work from photographs. I like to certainly work from photographs, so I'm on the internet. So here I'm just going to say done, and that'll be saved like that. And then we'll go back to there and you can kind of see how that works. So that's going to be perfect. That's exactly what we want our painting to look like when we're finished, or close to it. So let's do this. Let's take this now. We'll zoom back out like that. Perfect. And then we'll take our phone. We'll put this back over here so it's on cam. So now we still have our phone on cam. You can see that. Obviously, some of you, I know you probably work from like panel TVs, large screen TVs, maybe some of you, or home computers, large screens, or even iPads. iPads are perfect working with watercolors. And you'll be able to see this pretty well if you're working on a larger screen. But in any case, we have our palette here, perfect, all our colors. We have our photograph. Again, we enhanced that. We just saw how we did that. I just used the one adjustment, the light and dark adjustment on the photograph, and then saved it, and that's what we have. And then over here, again, we have our pencil drawing. We did the whole layout of how we got to the final pencil drawing composition. And now we're just going to start in with our washes. So I'm going to use a regular round brush. And I have fresh, clean water. So I have fresh, clean water in a water bucket. And what I'll do is I'm just going to make the decision that I want to go, light with my first wash. I don't want to go really dark. Let me go lighter. I don't want to go with a lot of dark tonal values. I want to keep the brightness of this painting. So I'm going to use cobalt blue and cerulean blue. You can kind of see I'm mixing the cerulean blue and the cobalt blue up here. And then even a little bit of raw sienna. So raw sienna mixed in with some of that blue is going to give us a kind of a green, goldish green, like a warm blue, kind of a bluish green. And so we're going to mix up plenty. We want to have plenty of wash here because we are going to make this very wet. Glazing technique, lots of water. Remember, when we use the glazing technique, we're looking to have some really good washes, some really good color, lots of water. So I'm going to use some French ultramarine blue too, up here too as well. Lots of cerulean blue, cobalt blue. I'm using all my blues, French ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, and cerulean blue here. Like that. So that's going to be our predominant color with some raw sienna, which is close to yellow ochre. If you didn't have raw sienna but you had yellow ochre, you can use yellow ochre. Raw sienna is better because it's actually transparent. So that's why I like to use raw sienna for that first wash, because it's a lighter, more transparent wash. Yellow ochre is opaque, kind of a little bit more opaque of a color, but I think that looks pretty good. And we can also add a little bit of alizarin crimson over here on the left, and some alizarin crimson and some red, some purple and red. So alizarin crimson and purple, like that. Over here, we're going to maybe add some of that into, maybe a touch of cadmium red. And the reason I'm adding all of these colors is because that's what's in our painting, and there's also yellow. So let's add some cadmium yellow. So what I'm going to try to do is, you can kind of see here I mixed all these colors. These colors of the shacks are, the cadmium red is the one shack, kind of looks like it's a cadmium red. Cadmium yellow is this other shack over here. So that's yellow, so gold, yellow, gold, and yellow there. And then we have some raw sienna, which is kind of ties in with the gold. And then we have tons of blue for the sky, obviously, for the sky wash and the water, and some green. The green is for the water. The water has a kind of a greenish tone to it. And but I think that's good. So we've got plenty of colors mixed up. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to wet a sponge with fresh, clean water. So I'm going to empty out my water pail. I'm going to pour fresh, clean water into my water bucket. And I'm going to use a sponge. And I'm just going to wet this paper with a sponge like this. Now, if you want to, I would say, because we have so much pencil lines on this painting, we're probably not going to be, it's not going to be good to kind of go over the top of this with a sponge. So let's just use our flat brush here and get a lot of water on the paper. Let's add tons of water to this paper right now. Like this. So you can kind of see I'm flooding the paper with lots of water with my flat brush here. This is a Da Vinci flat brush, and it's a 30 millimeter. So it's not extremely large as far as the brushes go, but it's a decent size. You know, you can kind of see it compared to a round brush like a number 6 or number 8. This is a number 8 round brush. So it's perfect for this size paper. This size paper is probably like a 10 by 12. And that's what we want to do. I'm flooding the paper with water because we want to really get that watery effect with the glazing technique right now. So here we go. Plenty of water. You can always take a paper towel if you want. At the bottom of the page, you can take a paper towel and just any excess water that flows down the paper. I'm on a slight angle, maybe about 7 degrees or 10 degrees of pitch on my paper. I have my paper tilted a little bit down this way. So I maybe clean up a little bit of the water on the bottom of the paper, but plenty of water on the paper. And then I will add a little more water up top, like this. One last time, just a little bit of water up top. Then I'm going to go in and we'll start getting our washes in here. And as you recall, I did mention that I'd like to keep this light, this painting light. But I will add some of that red and purple in the sky wash. And we're not so much concerned about having this being like a perfectly realistic painting. I'm trying to actually have tons of beautiful color and washes, as you can see. And as long as I'm mixing all the colors all the way throughout the whole painting, that's all we need to do. So all the colors are here now. So any other color that we use from this point onward, once the paper dries 100%, we already have it on the paper itself, on this watercolor paper, so it won't look out of place or kind of, you know, it's always good to have all of your colors harmonizing on your paintings. That does look good if you can harmonize all your colors. Use all the same colors throughout the whole painting that you're doing, and then that'll always get a really good effect for you. So now I'll just go around and dry up some of the water that's splashed over, and at the bottom of the painting too as well. I'll just lift up some of that extra water that's flowed on down. And look at that, we have a wonderful first glazing and first wash on there. And then I wouldn't fuss with it much past what we just did now. We just got it on the, you know, it's going to be light. It's going to dry a lot lighter than you see right now, and it's already pretty light, as you can see. But that's what we wanted to do, is get like a tone on the paper, a tonal value, a very, very light tonal value of all the colors that we're going to continue to use throughout this painting. So let's let this dry. I'm going to let this dry naturally, I think, versus using a blow dryer. I'm going to have some dinner, and then I'll come back after dinner, and that'll be probably perfect because it'll be about an hour, and it should be at that point dry. And you'll see the paper will be now, it'll be flat again, the paper nice and flat. So we have a really great canvas or a great watercolor paper to work on that's nice and smooth, flat, no bumps or buckles, and then we can get in our all our lines and our colors and our paint, you know, paint in all of our colors on our shacks here, and our the pilings. We'll get all the details in here, but I think you'll see that it's really coming along here, and especially when you get that first wash on like we have here, you always have to remember you have to let this dry 100%. 100% dry before you go back in and start painting again. And then I think at that point, once you've done that a number of times for quite a long time, then you can start experimenting with going back into this painting like this while it's damp a little bit. But I wouldn't suggest it if you're sort of like not 100% used to working with the glazing technique. You always want to let this first wash dry 100% so that the paper's perfectly flat, dry to the touch, and then you go in and you start doing your all your other washes. And again, if you're more experienced with it, then fine, go for it. When it starts to dry, but it's got a little bit of dampness to it, you might be able to start putting in some washes and get some interesting effects too as well. But I'm going to actually show the proper way to do it if you're still learning and you're trying to get that perfect painting and close to as perfect as possible. And that would be letting this dry 100% because it makes your life so much easier. You won't have any problems with washes looking really unpleasant looking and flowing out and going into other areas that you don't want it to. It becomes unmanageable if you try to paint on wet paper like this after you do this first wash. All right, so let's start up again in just about an hour. Or if you have a blow dryer, you can blow dry this off, within 10, 15 minutes or even 5, 10 minutes at most. You'll be able to dry this all off with a blow dryer if you don't want to wait an hour. But in any case, I'll be back once this is 100% dry and we'll pick up again. All right, so we're going to get started now with our next glazing. And like we said, we definitely let this dry 100%. This is might have a touch of dampness to it, but I mean really like hardly anything. It's dry to the touch, but the paper might have just a little bit of tiny bit of buckling, but nothing that would affect us as we go in and paint. So this is a touch damp probably on the underside of this sheet of paper, but the top is completely dry. As you can see, I can slide my hand across it and it's not a problem at all. Okay, now we're going to look at our colors on our fishing shacks here, and I'll just start mixing the colors pretty much. I'm going to go with cadmium red and yellow raw sienna, cadmium red for that reddish brick kind of brick color. A little more cadmium red, maybe a touch of the alizarin crimson for that color, maybe a touch of brown in there. And then we're going to do some, I'll rinse my brush off, and then we'll go in and get some raw umber and yellow, cadmium yellow. So raw umber and cadmium yellow with a touch of some cerulean blue in there too. Maybe a touch of brown too, burnt umber. And then a little bit of orange too. I think I see a little bit of orange in there. And what else do we have? So yeah, we do see some cerulean blue there. Let's have some of that in there. And there's also some viridian as well, I see in some of the areas. In this fish, there's some netting here, some fish netting. And I see some viridian green too over here in the on the side of this fishing shack, which is probably the same thing. Some fish netting maybe rolled up and stored there on the side. And I think this is pretty good. I think we can get started now. Let's start out with our red here, and let's get some of that red color. I'll paint around that window for now. And that looks good. A nice orangey red. And then over here, same thing. That door is going to be a darker tonal value, so I can paint right over that door there. And it's a little bit darker over there, so maybe I'll get some burnt umber, maybe a touch of cobalt blue to darken up that red. A little bit there. That might be a little darker over here. So we'll make that just a little bit darker. For some reason it looks like there's some shadowing over there somehow. And then some of the yellow over here. We can go right in like this. We can blend a little bit of that there. A little bit of blue. And the same thing over here. This is gold. Okay, and then we have some more of that shadow color here. I think there's some shadow colors here along the front. That would be cerulean blue mixed in with a little bit of that red there. The red that we made for the this fishing shack over here. And I'll start going in and doing some of the pilings and things underneath. Maybe we'll go in with some darker burnt umber and cobalt blue. Okay, and some darker shadows under there like so. And we will continue to put in shadows and there's a little bit of just a tiny bit of maybe some roof tin. Maybe it's a metal roof there. So we have a little bit of roof tins here. A little bit of shadowing over here. Like that. And there's shadow under there. And under here. So I'm just slowly getting some shadows in here and there. You can add them in. You can add the shadows in here and there when the paper is damp, as long as you're just aware that what type of shadow is it? Is it a cast shadow? Or is it like kind of a cast shadow, but kind of like not as sharp of a shadow? Sometimes shadows can be soft. So since these shadows are soft underneath some of the eaves of the roof, I can add them in while these are wet. The washes are wet, and then I'm going to maybe continue over here. Raw umber, burnt umber, raw umber, a little bit of cerulean blue. There's a little bit of cadmium yellow. There's a little bit of gold, raw umber, some blue, some green. There's some viridian over here. Then we can go with some burnt sienna, burnt umber, French cerulean blue. Then we can start getting in some of these uprights here, some of these pilings. And again, we're not going to get too I like to mix up the tonal values and the colors, so I would definitely do some browns, some blues. And I'll just keep continuing to work the docks and the pilings. And then you can see that we definitely have these kind of these uprights. There's a lot of uprights in this painting, vertical lines, so this is kind of really nice. And I'm just going to get them in. I'm not going to get too fussy where I start to I try to get them in decently here. And there's a few on the angles like that. And there's some over here like that. And there's a few more over here. There's some lines in the boards on the planking. And again, I try to change up the colors. You know, I don't want to go with just one color. You can kind of see I'm mixing up cobalt blue and some burnt umber up here, maybe some cadmium red down here with some cerulean blue. And this way we can get a nice mixture of different colors for our darks. And I think this is looking pretty good. We have some shadowing under this box here. Maybe a little bit of a shadow on this side there, like so. Like that. Go. And we are really this is coming along really nicely. I would say we could shift to a smaller brush right now. I'm going to use maybe a smaller, like number 4, to get some of these. So I'm going to use burnt umber and cerulean blue, a little bit of cadmium red as well. Thicker paint, not as much water, hardly any water, just mostly paint. And then what I'd like to do is I'm just using a dowel, a wood dowel I had in my studio, just so I can sort of rest my brush. You could even do it this way. Instead of getting too fancy with like something like a wood dowel or a piece of molding or something like that, which I sometimes do, you can get the same kind of straight line by just doing a little bit of line at a time. So you would just take your brush and go up a little bit like so, and then maybe take a break, maybe dab a little bit of paint off, dry off some of the paint off the brush, maybe go a little lighter for a little bit there. Then maybe pick up a little bit of gold, maybe here some yellow, and maybe do a little bit of yellow there for a second. But if we slowly go up and just do a little bit of the line at a time and keep our hands stable on the paper, then we can get it like that. So if we just do like an inch at a time, instead of getting too fancy, then we can do it just like this here. This one comes down like that, an inch or two at a time. Then we come over here, we get maybe some more cobalt blue, dry off a little bit of the paint off the brush, just so we don't have too much paint. Make sure we don't lean in any wet paint. So I'm going to make sure I keep my hand up here and rest it on the paper up here, and then just come up and do a little more like that. And then if it's damp there, I would just do a light. So I'm again just doing like an inch or two at a time, just carefully, not too much paint. Dry the paint off on a tissue or paper towel or something to keep your brush kind of dry, not too wet with too much paint, like that. And you get that nice look to it. And we'll do the same thing over here. This one's kind of simple. We can just do that. And then over here, this one's really thin, so we just do a thinner line like that. Okay, so now we have beautiful verticals, tons of vertical lines in our painting. We want to get the ocean, maybe the distant ocean. So let's do some of that distant ocean like this with this small brush again, maybe a little French ultramarine blue, just to get a little more zip into that, so that looks a little more interesting. And then over here too, the same thing, like that. Maybe we'll pick up some of that green, the Viridian, maybe drag it across here. Maybe we have a little bit of the water sort of shimmering, the light on the water. Like that. That's just a matter of using the brush, drying off a little bit of the paint, and then dragging the brush across on the side. And I also am using rough paper, Arches rough paper. So if you want to get these water effects where you have the light shimmering on the water, rough paper is how that happens. Like using smooth paper, we couldn't get that effect. But since we are using rough paper, we're really lucky. We can kind of we can get that effect. So there we have it, and then we can even add in a little more exciting French ultramarine blue, maybe in a spot or two. And This is looking good. I'm going to get some darks in here now for the window. And if you go over a line, no problem. You can just kind of lift up like that. We'll let this dry a little bit more, the facade of these fishing shacks, so that we can do the dark doors and the windows, and then also the there's like a small staircase and like a walkway, elevated walkway with some posts. But this is very damp right now. All this paper here is still damp from when we did that original wash, just only 15 minutes ago or so. So it does stay damp for quite a while. We did put a decent amount of wash on there. So now's a good time to take a break. Let's take a break and let this dry, the fishing shacks, because we have to do the windows, the posts, some of the shadowing. I think we do. So for that to happen, we definitely want to let that dry a little bit. And then this is actually, we want to see this like that. That line continues down this way here. And okay, so we'll do that. We'll let this set up a little bit. We could also do a few more so I'll just mix up the colors a little bit for these pilings here. There's quite a few. So every once in a while you see an angled piling like that, but mostly all these are uprights, vertical lines. Quite a few over here. Like that. There's another one there. All right, I think it's looking pretty good. I think all we have to do now is just let this dry here, the fishing shacks, the red and the yellow golden colored paint. We'll let that dry, and I think we're almost finished. After we do some dark windows and doors on this structure and maybe a little bit of some siding, it looks like there's some vertical lines for the vertical planks that these buildings are comprised of. Once we can get that in, a couple more details on our shacks here, then we would probably the next thing we'll get some of the shadowing of the dock here. Underneath these docks, you'll have the shadowing we have here. You can see that in the photo. There's some beautiful shadowing, which is under, it's like a shadowing on top of the water. So we'll do that water shadowing. And I think I'm going to leave most of this white paper, so I don't want to get too fancy and start doing all kinds of watercolors and things like that as far as like the color of the water. Let's leave some really light paper like we see in this here. This is kind of an exciting tonal value pattern that we have here, which is mostly lights with some quite a bit of medium tones, which is the water and the shacks, and then just a little bit of the work with the post, the vertical pilings and details with the darks. And I think if we stick to that game plan of kind of the gallon of whites, quart of the medium tones, which is the buildings, the shacks, and then a pint of the darks, which is the piling, which is the pilings and the, the power poles and things like that. So if we have that going for us, I think we're really doing quite well here. I think we have kind of the right tonal value structure that we're looking for on the painting. And as well, we have tons of verticals. You can see all the vertical lines on this painting. That dominates the whole painting, which gives it a really nice, pleasing look. That'll always be a really pleasing painting if you can have something kind of dominate the whole painting like this, like the verticals. These all dominate the whole look of the painting. So that's, we have beautiful colors in here too, don't get me wrong, but these vertical uprights really look beautiful, and they're throughout the whole painting, which looks great. So let's take a break. We'll let this dry a little more over here, the fishing shacks with our red and gold colors there, and we'll get some darks in there. We might even be able to work on, yeah, I think we can actually work on some of these darks now. So we'll do the posts. And then we have the doors, which are dark. Brown and cobalt blue, burnt umber, cobalt blue. So if we can get those in, that's good. We have that there. The door. And then sometimes too, we can scratch out a little bit of paint for the post here. Like that. And what else do we have? We have another door over here. And I thought this is kind of darker down there, like so. And another door over here. Like that. So we have a couple doors on our shacks here. A little bit of highlights under there, or I should say shadows under there, under the eaves and the rake edges of the building. And then some more cerulean blue. So I have some cerulean blue, and again, we're doing more verticals. These look really good. So I'm just trying to get plenty of verticals, and that works really well. That looks good. And there's some shadow under there like so. And then again, some cobalt blue, burnt umber, cerulean blue. And we'll just get our, we have a staircase here and walkway that goes over the other side. Like that. All right, let's leave this as it is right now. We'll come back in just a few minutes after this dries a little more. I think actually we're just going to do the shadowing, the shadowing and reflections of the underside of the these docks here on the water. And I think that's all that we'll need. And we'll move back to a larger brush for that. We'll go back to our number 8 round brush to get our shadowing over here. And we're going to do it really loosely, really quickly, and we'll figure out what colors. I think we're going to use probably this here, which is going to be viridian green, cerulean blue, maybe a little bit of cadmium red, just to kind of get a nice mixture of warm and cool. Like that. So that'll be our shadow mixture, I think. We'll try to use that and see how it works. Some cobalt blue as well. All right, let's try that in just a second. Let's just take a quick break, refocus, and then we'll come back and get those last bit of shadows and reflections for our water underneath this scene here under the docks, and we'll see how it goes. All right, so we're going to finish up here with our washes underneath the docks here, and we have our colors already mixed. And let's just see here, let's look at our photograph, and we can kind of just get those. We could add a little bit of water first, maybe. So you can add a little bit of water first to your paper, and then add in some color to that. I'm going to use cerulean blue and green, the viridian green. Like that. Splash on some water. I think that looks good. And if you go over a spot, you can always use a little bit of tissues. And then over here, I think we have a little more. And like we said before, the light's coming from this direction forward, so you're seeing the shadowing, the reflections and shadowing of the water. And I just might go across this way a little bit with a few just a couple of horizontal strokes like this, just to give it a little bit of that watery look. I think that looks good. And there's a little bit of gold color here, I noticed. And some cerulean blue. So I'll just add that bit of color there. Maybe even a little bit of red, even though I don't see any. I'm going to add a touch of red just to balance the colors. And a couple of splashes. I'm just going to do a couple for the planks, a little bit of cobalt blue, burnt umber. Then I'll dry off the brush a little bit, and just a couple of these planks like that. Just a couple of indications of some planking. Like that. And then maybe just a couple, maybe some cerulean blue and the burnt umber, like this. And maybe I'll dry off the brush a little bit. And maybe I'll just do a couple, just a couple of lines like this. Just like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Like that. Maybe a seagull up here. Okay. And Okay, I think this is good. I think we can call this a finished painting. We don't want to go too much more, and then when we add too many details, then we kind of start to have issues with things looking maybe too cluttered and too much busyness to the painting. I think this is just the right amount of details where we can call this finished. I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel as we wrap up here. The subscribe button is just down below on the right hand side. That means you'll just be kind of joining along with us week after week as we go, and you'll see my videos in your YouTube homepage. When we make a new video, you'll just be alerted that we made a new video, so you can kind of keep up with what we're doing on a regular basis, and you work when you want to. And you know, sometimes maybe you'll just watch if you're not so interested in drawing and painting a certain painting, but most times you probably want to jump in and have a fun time and work along with us all here. We're, you know, thousands of us are working every week here. We're getting always better at our watercolor paintings and drawings because we're just working every week, you know, week after week, month after month, and year after year. That will equal success and better paintings always. So thanks again for coming by, painting with me. And what we'll do is we'll do more paintings like this with the glazing technique. I paint in both the glazing technique and the alla prima technique, as well as blending both of those together sometimes. So it all depends on what we're painting, but you'll get to learn a lot of interesting techniques and methods here on my channel. So please stick with me, have lots of fun, enjoy the watercolor journey, everybody, and we'll see you on the next video.